So you talked about growing up in Lampasas. So what was it
Mhm.
like? I mean, first of all, let's let folks know out there who don't know. They should already, but your dad was a phenomenal singer songwriter as well. I was a Dale McBride fan as well.
Oh man.
Yeah, loved his music. My dad, even though I was from Massachusetts, he was a big country
Oh.
music fan, and your dad always reminded me of Marty Robbins and kind of
Uh-huh.
that vibe back in those days. What was it like
Yeah.
growing up with an artist like that as a youngster?
Oh, it was crazy. It's, as a kid, it's all it's your parents.
Right.
But a lot of my friends in Lampasas were ranchers, their parents are ranchers or insurance or basic stuff, but a lot of agriculture there in and around Lampasas at that time. So my dad was totally different, of course, traveling, gone a lot of my young life for sure. I mean, when I was a kid, he would go to the West Coast for 3 months, which
Yeah.
is hard to wrap my head around that now. I used to tour quite extensively back in the 90s. But anyway, yeah, he was touring and going, and he was old school, a lot like Marty Robbins. He could do impressions, impersonations. He was a fantastic yodeler,
Hmm.
a really accomplished guitar player, and arranger. We had a recording studio. He did a lot of arranging strings, horns. He could do it all. He was really skilled at that and learned early from, I think, a great piano player that used to play with a guy named Jimmy Heap, who was from Taylor, which is why I was born in Taylor. My dad was the lead singer, guitar player for this big band, Jimmy Heap. And that was one of his earlier gigs, like out of high school.
Yeah, it was more like a rockabilly kind of sound, wasn't it?
Well, they had a big million selling single on Release Me, which Ray Price went on to have
Right.
years later,
Yeah.
talking like late 40s. They had a huge record on Release Me, and that kind of put Jimmy Heap on the map, I guess, for a while during that period. But he did have a traveling show, and my dad was part of it.
Right, because like I remember some of the songs like Prissy Missy and that was very
Oh,
rockabilly. Um,
oh man, that Prissy Missy. I wish I had a copy, Chris. I saw the single sold in the UK for like $250 or something.
wow.
There just aren't any copies of it, I guess. But boy, that's a rockin' rowdy track. You can find
Absolutely.
it on YouTube. That's just my dad, a saxophone player and a drummer.
Yeah.
Hey, my dad graduated in '55, so I'd say that's '56 or '7.
Yeah, so like knowing the kind of the songs that I remember my dad playing from Dale McBride, like the Corpus Christi Wind stuff like that, is so different
Right.
than Prissy Missy. And I know you had a relationship with Corpus Christi Wind as well. I think you recorded that as well, right?
I did record it, just paying tribute to my dad. I wanted to do something that was a big song for him back in the day, kind of a little minor hit, but sort of crossed over, got some pop airplay and some country. And my dad wrote it up in Goose Bay, Labrador. I remember him telling the story. He was kind of homesick, and that's where that song came from. But when I was young, my dad was a writer, so I saw that early on. It was so interesting. He actually had an office next door in sort of a carport breezeway office. My mom had a sewing room. She was a really talented at art and sewing. She could make anything. She would make like a double-breasted suit for my GI Joe when I was a kid,
Nice.
and
That's cool, man.
he looked. I could have him go into a cool event, or I could
Yeah.
have him in his camo, killing something the next minute. So it was.
Yeah. That's great.
I think I blew all my GI Joes up, dang it, with firecrackers and stuff. I hate that. I wanted them to look like they were in combat. That's so horrible. But I wish I'd saved a couple. I've saved a lot of stuff. Unfortunately, the GI Joe did not survive. But
And your dad's
anyway,
singles didn't either, right?
yeah, I have most of his collection. I have lots of stuff here at this little house studio we call it, and I have all of his guitars and a whole bunch of memories. From my dad
Yeah.
touring and going down the road. But yeah, it was totally different life because my dad had cool, interesting people coming and going a lot. Uh, Always recording, always rehearsing when he was home. That kind of dad. He'd
Yeah.
also we got in the front. He'd throw the ball. A million, you know, little wide end routes I ran. He'd catch the ball. My dad, he was athletic and he was had some fun memories of him. And then, we started playing with him at an early age, going out on the road with him in the summers. He was playing nice hotels, maybe a week or two at a time, and I'd take my bass along, get to play some. teaching me how to read these massive chord charts that he had everything written out for bass, drums, whoever he needed. If he blew into a hotel, he had a trio. He had the whole show written out in these
Wow.
massive chart books, including like an hour of dinner music. They would be 3, 4 pages when you unfolded, and it would have, you take the first ending, you go back, and second ending, take the coda.
So just very regimented then, huh?
Very. He was real
Yeah.
strict too when it came to
Yeah.
music and me or anybody in the band. Oh, it was tough when I finally got in the band. I was the son and the employee, and I was driving a bus, my dad's bus, learning to double clutch across the country, grinding gears all the way from Texas to Wyoming.
That's great. What are some things you
Yeah.
learned from your dad? And even more importantly, what are some lessons you learned from your mom that you still kind of lean on today?
Well, my mom, like I said, I was in a real creative household. My parents were also big time readers. They were well read, but which sounds like more than me. But yeah, that we had a nice little library of some interesting books. My dad liked to read to us when we were young, like it might be Mark Twain, a short story or something.
Hmm.
Sometimes he would get so tickled himself by being the narrator, he couldn't even finish the story hardly. We'd all get to giggling and laughing. It was so fun.
That's great.
But that family time that almost doesn't exist sometimes anymore. But
Hmm.
he took pride and took time that way for sure. Um, but yeah, and the other cool thing, Chris, I had my grandparents right next door. I grew up next door to my dad's mom and dad, and that was a big plus. I spent half my life over there,
Hmm.
and watching Lawrence Welk to playing dominoes and checkers a lot with my granddad, and he was a cigar pipe smoking guy, so that's where I got my first taste of tobacco, which damn near killed me at about 5 years old.
Wow. Yeah.
He
Yeah. Yeah.
he
Yeah.
he smoked those Tiparillos
Hmm.
sometimes with the tip.
Yeah.
So he would throw them down. They'd still be lit, Chris. So I'd
Yep.
pick one up, and my family they filmed me. I'm part of a home movie where they're just letting me walk around and smoke this cigar.
Golly. As long as you weren't
Yeah.
topless, though. As long as you weren't topless.
Yeah. I think I was topless. I think I only had my shorts on.
Oh
Now that you
man.
mentioned it,
Yeah.
I had no shirt on. It's Texas summertime.
Here's a question for you, Terry. A lot of times when your folks are, if either one or both of your parents are, an artist themselves or songwriter or involved in the music business at all, as a child, you can either kind of gravitate towards that because it's all you know, but a lot of children will rebel against that too in some
Mm.
ways or fashions. What did you do? Was there any rebelliousness against music?
Yeah, not so much, but I went through a rebellious sort of phase, because my parents split in the 8th grade,
Okay.
and I kind of acted out. I didn't know what to do really, kind of went from my parents, having problems to all of a sudden my mom just leaving. It
Hmm.
was life as I had known it was kind of over at that particular point. And then going into high school, it's sort of a rebellious, you want your freedom type of phase stage in your life anyway. So I was probably acting a little bit out a little bit. My dad was on the road. He was having a lot of success in the 70s,
Hmm.
had some little charted singles. He was signed to a label in Nashville, and especially in the mid to late 70s. And but yeah, it was an odd time for me. But my dad taught me so much. That was in high school. I had so much fun. So that kind of saved me. Music always has. If things weren't great at home, I always had my guitar from 9 years old on. I mean, I can't tell you how many hours listening to 45s when I was a kid, trying to figure out what was happening, like everybody does when you
Hmm.
fall in love like that. I've had this love affair with music ever since.
Yeah.
So it's started early, and I was very passionate and had a lot of want to, more than talent, probably in the beginning. And so my dad just gave me this little cheap Mexican guitar that he bought in Mexico, and this left me kind of with it. And I
Mhm.
really started to figure it out. And he was like, "Damn it, now what do I do?" Taught me a few chords, but still not pushing me to be anything. And until I was about 13, and I was starting to play in little bands, he took me over to look at some bass guitars because he was like, I'm a guitar player. I don't need a guitar player, but I do need a good bass player.
Mhm.
And if you're going to play with me someday, which of course is all I wanted to do as a kid.
Of course, yeah.
It's like, you need to learn to play bass. So I did. I liked it a lot. real easy four strings. I was like, I found my instrument, because yeah, I just took to it. I really loved it. Still do. Still enjoy playing it to this day.
What are some things that your dad taught you? Or actually, let me put it to you like this: was he kind of giving you pointers on the road life? Because he's blazing that trail before you. He's learning all the good things to do, the things to stay away from. Is he kind of passing that on to you as his son?
He was. I think he wanted me to be a little more serious at times because I was a young kid. My dad was very, very serious, very straight, didn't drink, and became very religious towards the end of his life. And part
Hmm.
of our relationship at one point, he really went all in at one point. Um, but yeah, we had some struggles, butting heads at times. But loved my dad, and he taught me so much. Even at times, was trying to tell me things like, this is a business, son. It's
Hmm.
more than just fun out here, and there are taxes that you have to be paid. You're could be self-employed. Things I had no idea, and really didn't even want to talk about. I had no interest in it until it kind of smacked me in the face later when you realize you owe taxes and whatever's happened.
Yeah.
Or you're in debt as a starving musician. My starving musician phase went on way longer than I hoped it would have. I mean, into my late 20s, Chris, which all my friends had already gone to college. They've got some good jobs. And, I was still struggling. Fortunately, my wife was a nurse, which she really went to school just to get a job where
Hmm.
she could help being married to some musician.
Yeah.
She could move, live anywhere, still have a job. And so she really helped out in the beginning. And that's the only way we made it,
Yeah.
honestly, because even when I was playing with Delbert McClinton, one of the coolest gigs on the road and the best tours and fun, exciting, cool stuff. I still wasn't making a great living, and I was drinking most of my salary back in that day too, which didn't help. So it was
Yeah. That's not a
struggling.
good way of getting out of the starving phase, right?
Yeah, I was just stuck in it, and I love that gig. I loved Delbert. I learned so much. Talk about learning something on the road. He was really a master at working that crowd up into a frenzy,
Hmm.
dynamically with the band and horns. It was a whole different scene that I hadn't been a part of before. So it really opened my eyes up to, wow, how you could light a fire under a crowd and keep it going. It's easy to walk out and get the crowd's attention, but keeping it for 90 minutes sometimes can be a chore,
Yeah.
or have its peaks and valleys, and it can level off. And there's nothing wrong with that, but he just never let up off the gas.